Today I am in South Georgia, and full disclosure, Amy just started a new contract and we're back in Georgia again. So you know, I'm gonna have quite a few videos coming from the Georgia area while we're working in this area. But right now I'm in South Georgia, and as you can see, I'm in a town called Ocilla. This video is a true crime story, and I'm doing it first because it's been all in the news lately. The actual crime in this video took place back in 2005. It went cold for about a decade, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, law enforcement got a tip that led them to two men who appeared as if they were straight out of Hazard County, and that's a joke. You guys will understand in a little bit. If you're not familiar with the story, those men ultimately confessed to the murder, and then they recanted their confession and they pointed the finger at each other. And as these cases have gone through the court systems over the last few years, the media has been all over it, and people, they have been invested in this case, praying and hoping that the victim here got justice. Both of their trials are now over, which is why I ultimately decided to come do this now, because it just ended. Today, like I said, I'm in Ocilla, and I'm going to be going around to the locations, and I'm going to be telling this story of the disappearance of Tara Grinstead. She was a beauty queen, came up missing. Like I said, it was cold for a decade, but it's now been solved, and it's wild. Tara Faye Grinstead, she was born in 1974 in Hawkinsville, Georgia, not far from here in Ocilla. And for her entire life, she was a beautiful woman. But at the same time, she had a very perky and bubbly personality. She was just all around a great person. After Tara graduated high school, she started entering into beauty pageants, and she ultimately won a few of them, and she took the winnings that she got from those beauty pageants and she enrolled and eventually graduated from Middle Georgia State College. From there, Tara went on to become a school teacher right here at Irwin County High School, where she taught 11th grade. Tara lived right here in this home. She lived here by herself with her pet. And at the same time as Tara was teaching, she was still entering into beauty pageants, and she even won Miss Tifton, Georgia in 1999.
My platform promotes recycling, preserve the future, recycle the past. I am Tara Grinstead.
I'm an 11th grade history teacher at Irwin County High School, and I also have a cheerleading squad of junior varsity cheerleaders, 9th and 10th graders. I just completed my first year teaching, and I loved every bit of it.
She entered into that pageant a year after she began teaching, and winning that regional pageant, it ultimately gave her lifelong dream, and it allowed her to go into the Miss Georgia beauty pageant, which she didn't win. Now, because Tara was such an attractive woman, obviously she drew a lot of attention from all the horny teenage boys who were in her classes. She would often get rude comments and propositions from these young boys. In fact, one man named Anthony Vickers even became so obsessed with her that he followed her home one day and attempted to break into her home to sexually assault her. But he was ultimately unsuccessful, and he got caught, and she called the police on him. After the events of the story, Anthony Vickers went on to describe the situation as being a misunderstanding, and he told anyone that would listen that he and Tara were having a sexual relationship together. And at the time that he came to her house, Tara was there with another man, and she didn't want this man to know that she was sleeping with a student of hers. So she pretended as if he wasn't welcome. That's what he says. Tara definitely had the attention of all the boys and men here in the small town, and she dealt with these unwanted proposals and encounters on a daily basis. Tara, on top of being the school teacher by day, she had a very active social life once the school bell rang in the afternoons. And Tara was also known to go through quite a few different boyfriends. Because of this single young woman lifestyle that she was living, she quickly developed a reputation among the people here in Ocilla, Georgia, as someone who slept around very easily. And there was also a lot of rumors going around that she had been sleeping with some of the male high school students that she was teaching. Tara's friends say that she did date some of the boys that she had taught in high school, but that she didn't date them until they had graduated, until she was no longer their teacher. But since the events of this story have come out, more than a handful of men have come out and said that yes, they did have a sexual relationship with Tara Grinstead while they were her students. On October the 22nd of 2005, Tara spent the evening at a young girls beauty pageant right here at this theater. Among participating in beauty pageants of her own, Tara was also a coach for little girls, and they had a pageant right here that evening on the 22nd. We know that Tara left from here and went to a barbecue at a friend's house. Once that barbecue ended, she left, and no one would ever see Tara Grinstead alive ever again.
Turning our attention now to the case of that missing Georgia high school teacher, Tara Grinstead.
Volunteers are back searching for Tara Grinstead.
2 days later, on October the 24th, it was a Monday morning, Tara did not show up for work at the high school. It was unusual for Tara just to not show up and to not call. So some of her friends who were co-workers of hers, there were other teachers at the school, they got worried and they started trying to contact her. After several hours of not being able to get a hold of her, they eventually called the Ocilla Police Department here and had them go by her home and do a welfare check. When the Ocilla Police Department arrived here at Tara's home, they knocked on the doors and they didn't get any kind of answer. So fearing for her safety, they breached her home. They went inside to look for her, and there was no sign of Tara Grinstead anywhere inside of the home. They noticed that Tara's cell phone was plugged into the wall and it was charging. The clothes that Tara had on at the barbecue, they were all balled up in the floor in her bedroom, meaning that she obviously came in and changed clothes before whatever happened. In the master bathroom, Tara's landline phone was laying on the floor for some reason. And in Tara's bedroom, it looked like there had been some sort of a struggle because there was a broken lamp and there were some items from the closet that were strode out across the floor. Outside of the home here, they found a single white rubber glove, like what they would use in hospitals. It was laying on the ground in the dirt, and they would eventually get a single fingerprint from the glove. They also got DNA that belonged to Tara and an unknown male, but they never could match it up to anyone. They noticed that Tara's car was sitting under the carport, and crazily, sitting on the dashboard of the car was an envelope that was full of money. Law enforcement that were here on the scene, they immediately went looking for the keys to Tara's car, and they ultimately discovered that her keys were missing, and so was her purse. It didn't make any sense to law enforcement. Why take her car keys and her purse but leave money behind? It made no sense. Right away, massive manhunts went on with people looking for Tara anywhere and everywhere. They went through wooded areas, they went through watery areas, they searched empty homes, they searched everywhere for Tara, and days went by and they had no luck. So the Ocilla Police Department immediately contacted the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and asked for their assistance. They basically told them, hey, we're not big enough to handle a case like this, so we need some help. The GBI obliged, and they immediately came down here and started their own investigation. Right off the bat, the GBI identified 3 suspects that they wanted to look into. One of them was Tara's most recent ex-boyfriend. He was in the military. His name was Marcus Harper. The second suspect was the boy who tried to break into her home. He was the student that was obsessed with her, Anthony Vickers. And then the third suspect was a current love affair of Tara's. He was a married man, and he was also a police officer from the next county over, Perry County. His name was Heath Dykes. The GBI investigators tried to keep Heath Dykes out of it as much as possible because he was cheating on his wife with Tara, and they didn't want to out him to her or disturb his career in law enforcement. But ultimately it didn't matter, because ultimately all 3 of those suspects wound up having a legitimate alibi, and they were all ruled out. It left investigators basically with no leads, no suspects, so Tara's disappearance went cold. For 3 whole years, not much happened on Tara's case. In 2008, though, it did get a little bit of renewed attention when the CBS show 48 Hours came here to town, and they told parts of the story. But again, nothing came of it, and it went cold again. In February of 2009, videos surfaced on the internet of a self-proclaimed serial killer who called himself the Catch Me Killer. The man in the videos detailed what he claimed to be 16 different female victims that he had murdered, and authorities suspected that one of those women might be Tara.
I decided to confess a few things. I decided to do it on YouTube because there's millions of people that can help play my game. I want to confess to 16 murders. But in order to do so, I'm going to give everybody a clue. Many clues. Once all 16 bodies are found, you'll know exactly who I am. Because I have knowledge that the police know about, the FBI know about, but you don't.
The videos were traced back to a man named Andrew Haley. And after an extensive police investigation, it was revealed that the videos were an elaborate hoax put on by this Andrew Haley as some sort of weird fetish that he had to get attention. Very quickly, he was eliminated as a suspect. And again, Tara's case went cold. Tara's disappearance stayed a cold case all the way up until 2016, 11 years after her disappearance. And in 2016, a podcast decided to come here to town and tackle and investigate on their own and tell the story. And that podcast was called Up and Vanished. Up and Vanished, obviously, as the name says, it highlights cases where people just disappeared, where they up and vanished. And the host of that podcast, he came here to town researching and preparing his story, and he spoke to a woman that offered up a tip that no one had known before. The podcaster and this tipster immediately contacted the GBI, and in February of 2017, the GBI announced that they had received a tip that led them to the arrest of 2 men, Ryan Duke and Bo Dukes. And that's the joke I told in the intro, that they're straight out of Dukes of Hazzard, not only because of the way they look, but their name. Yeah. Apparently, this tipster actually dated Bo Dukes at one time, and while they were dating, Bo told this woman that his best friend Ryan had confided in him that he killed Tara and burned her remains. The woman really didn't think much of it at the time, and it wasn't until the podcast came out that she put the pieces together and remembered the conversation that she had had with him. Since the events of everything, Ryan Dukes himself has come out and said that in high school he was one of the men that was having an affair with Tara. She was sleeping with him as he was her student. And in the arrest affidavit that was read in court, it's believed at the time that Ryan Duke broke into Tara Grinstead's home and he was attempting to steal from her. They believe that she came home from that barbecue and she caught him in the act. So in the moment, he strangled her, and it's believed at that point he called Bo Dukes and had him come help him get rid of the body. Investigators sat down with Ryan Duke, and he very easily broke down and gave what they thought at the time was a full confession in very graphic details. Ryan described how he was in her home, and he was going through her purse when she came in, and she snuck up on him. They struggled in her bedroom, which resulted in the lamp getting broken and the room becoming disheveled. Then somehow Ryan managed to get on top of her, and he proceeded to strangle her to death. Ryan then told investigators that it's there that he got a hold of his friend Bo, and he came to Tara's home to help him remove her body. They brought Tara's body right here to this pecan grove right outside of Ocilla in Ben Hill County, Georgia. Ryan said that when he got here to the property, Bo Dukes had already gotten Tara out of the back of Bo's truck, and Tara was laying on the ground nude at that point. She had clothes on when he last saw her, but she didn't when he got there, and he had no clue, what Bo had done to her between the time that Bo left Tara's home with her body and the time he got out to that pecan grove. Ryan then said that the two of them then proceeded to set Tara's remains on fire And for a period of 2 full hours, they stood there out in that pecan grove watching her body burn because they had to continue stoking the fire to keep it from going out. Once investigators wrapped up their interrogation with Ryan, he agreed to take them to the spot where they had burned Tara's body. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation spent several days out in the pecan grove looking for her, and eventually they did find some charred remains buried in the ground that were positively identified as Tara Grinstead. This area here has changed quite a bit since 2017, and as you can see here, as I'm flying my drone over this field where she was recovered, what once was a dense forest area is now part of their pecan grove, and then some of the open sandy areas are no longer there altogether. But we can still kind of map it out where her remains were discovered using the footage that was taken when the GBI was here versus where I'm flying right now. In their footage, they start here at the road, they fly back here to this back corner, and then they kind of go right from there following the tree line, and then it's pretty close to the opposite side of the property. So I would have guessed probably about right in here is where Tara's remains would have been recovered by the GBI. Clearly the two men fully suspected this area was so rarely traveled that no one would ever find her, and they would be able to get away with this horrible, horrible crime. You know, to be honest, they probably would have gotten away with it had they not squealed and told people. A lot of the people that live here in this area believe that there were more people involved in Tara's murder than just Bo and Ryan. In the podcast that was done on Tara's disappearance, and if you talk to locals, they all say that they believe there were about 5 people all out at the pecan grove when they burned Tara's body. Bo, Ryan, and then 3 other men who were all students of Tara's, who were all involved with her sexually throughout high school. A lot of people here also believe the theory that no one had broken into her home that night, that that statement by police was just not true, and that either Bo and Ryan or all 5 of the men all confronted Tara, sexually assaulted her like in a gang rape type thing, and then they killed her so that she couldn't talk about it. To this day, only those 2 people have been arrested for this crime, and neither of those 2 have implicated anyone else. So if there was anyone else involved in this, you know, other than Bo and Ryan, they will probably never ever be charged. Both Bo Dukes and Ryan Duke sat in the Irwin County Jail as they awaited their trials. Bo Duke's trial came first, and as suspected, Bo pretty much pointed the finger at Ryan, and he said that he was very remorseful for helping Ryan dispose of her body. And ultimately, a jury of his peers found Bo Dukes not guilty for Tara's murder. But he was convicted for his role in the destruction of Tara's remains, and then also helping cover up her crime. Bo walked away with a win here, because he could have spent the rest of his life in prison, but he only wound up getting convicted of the cover-up. The judge, I think, probably felt like Bo had more to do with it than what he was saying. So the judge gave Bo the maximum amount of time that they could sentence him to, which was 25 years in prison. Ryan's trial was initially supposed to begin right after Bo's, but Ryan's defense attorneys, who are very prominent lawyers here in the state of Georgia, they believed that Ryan was innocent despite his confession, so they took on his case pro bono, which means for free pretty much, and they filed a motion to have the trial delayed, and then they immediately filed another motion to have the state pay for experts to come in on Ryan's behalf. Basically, Ryan's new attorneys came in and they said that Ryan was not the murderer here, even though he confessed to that. They said that he was under the influence of alcohol and morphine when he gave that confession. And then the attorneys claimed that Ryan had basically been brainwashed by Bo, and you know, Ryan was like super afraid of him. So his attorneys theorized that everything Ryan said in that confession was probably true, just flipped. So that it was Bo who broke into Tara's home that night, and she walked in on Bo in her purse. And then they went one step further and said that after Bo got control of Tara, he sexually assaulted her there in her home, which was why she didn't have any clothes on when Ryan saw her again at the pecan grove. Then they say that it was here that Bo called Ryan to help him dispose of her body, and they say that Ryan went along with it because he was scared of Bo. The lawyers believe that Bo Duke spent the next decade brainwashing Ryan into believing that he had actually killed her. That way, if the police did catch up to them, he could minimize his involvement and pin it on Ryan. And to be honest, the evidence certainly leans in their favor. After all, the pecan orchard that Tara's body was burned in and where they ultimately discovered her remains all those years later, that pecan orchard belonged to Bo's grandfather. It was Bo's family land where she was found. On top of that, Ryan, he had some involvement with drugs, but he didn't have an extensive police record. But Bo did. Bo had been in trouble with the law quite a bit, having anger issues and issues involving women. And after Tara's disappearance and her murder, but before the new information came forward and Bo and Ryan were charged, Bo was caught and arrested for sexually assaulting another woman and holding her against her will in Warner Robins, Georgia.
According to the Warner Robins Police Department, Bo Dukes allegedly assaulted 2 women and raped one of them in Bon Air Tuesday, and by Wednesday, the hunt for him was truly on.
This is video of the alleged victims after they escaped from Bo Dukes' home in Bon Air. They ran to a nearby house wearing towels. The women told police Dukes held them at gunpoint and raped them.
The MO fit here that Bo was actually the killer. And a lot of the people in Ocilla, Georgia, believe that it was Bo, not Ryan, who killed Tara Grinstead. That is why Ryan's lawyers wanted expert psychologists to come in, and it was so that they could show that, this is what happened, that it was really Bo who had done this to Tara Grinstead, not Ryan. Ryan's trial began back on May the 9th, last month, beginning of last month, and it was like heavily covered in the media. There's been, major news media outlets here in Ocilla for the whole trial almost. Prosecutors in that trial brought forth Ryan's confession and the statements from Bo's ex-girlfriend, and they tried to have Bo come in, but he immediately pleaded the fifth as soon as he got on the stand, and so they just asked him to leave, and they took him back to prison.
Thank you. Will you state your name for the record?
On the advice of counsel, I'll be invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to provide testimony.
Mr. Duke, do you intend to invoke your Fifth Amendment right to every question?
I do, Your Honor.
Any reason to continue this?
No, Judge.
You be excused.
The defense for Ryan Dukes, though, they threw out the theory that Bo was the real killer here, and then, everything I just explained about him being brainwashed and all of that. They actually had Ryan take the stand in his own defense and tell his version of events, which was that Bo had done this and that he was scared of Bo and that he only went along with it because of how scared he was of him. And apparently the jury bought it because last week Ryan's trial wrapped up and a jury of his peers spent very little time deliberating, and they too found Ryan Duke not guilty of Tara's murder. They only convicted Ryan on one charge, and that was concealing the death of another person, which is even a lesser conviction than what Bo got. Bo got 25 years in prison, while Ryan only got 10 years with the possibility of parole.
The state of Georgia versus Ryan Alexander Duke. We, the jury, find the defendant count 1, malice murder, not guilty. Count 2, felony murder, not guilty. Count 3, felony murder, not guilty. Count 4, aggravated assault, not guilty. Count 5, burglary, not guilty. Count 6, concealing death of another, guilty.
Because of the outcome of Bo and Ryan's trial so far, they have now charged Bo in Irwin County, and he now has to face trial again over this, basically the same thing. And that's possible because Tara, her remains were buried and all that in Ben Hill County, and that's where Bo was originally charged, and that's where he was, sent to prison at. Well, her death occurred in Irwin County, so now they're going to bring Bo over to Irwin County and have him stand trial again, going under the assumption that Bo was actually the killer here, not Ryan, unlike what they thought prior to all this going on. And that's pretty much where we sit at today. A lot of the people here, they believe Ryan's story, but one of the two of them is not telling the truth here, and neither one of them, whichever one it is, they're not going to confess up to it. So we'll probably never know which one of them really killed Tara Grinstead. It's just, it's horrible. It really is. This case here just goes to show you that cold cases can be solved. There's usually like one person, like Bo's ex-girlfriend here in this story, that one person might have a tiny piece of information that can blow a cold case wide open, and maybe, just maybe, finally get some closure to the families, you know, of the victims of these cold cases. If you hear about any unsolved case on my channel here, or anywhere else for all that matters, and you know the participants of that story, or even if someone has told you something about that story, you know, contact your local law enforcement and let them know, and you might just be able to make a difference in someone's life. That is going to do it for this story today here in Ocilla, Georgia. I do want to thank you all so much for watching. I can't thank you all enough for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, go down, hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. Thank you all. I will see you again tomorrow. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Much love to you all.